Hello everybody, my name is Mike Stowe and welcome back to the Barbarian build on Dark Souls. I am here with my Zweihander plus 14, which is more than a little bit overpowered for dealing with this next guy we've got right here. We're going to take on the Hydra here in Darkroot Basin. Doing this fight without a shield is a little bit on the difficult side, but you can get hit even if you have a shield, so you know, it's not that bad. As long as you have a weapon that you can cut a head with one slice each, that's really the main focus. Now we're here today because we're going to be taking on the Four Kings of New Londo. A boss which really should be, is one of the toughest bosses in the game and really should be fought towards the end of your playthrough, but I just wanted to show that you could do it very early on, especially if you have the Zweihander or another big, heavy strength weapon, because that fight is all about speed. Not that your weapon has to be fast, but speedily taking down each one of the kings, which you can do, and it's much easier if you have a lot of health, because that fight can be a little bit tricky and difficult if you're going to get hit quite a lot by some of these energy attacks that aren't really blockable anyway. And the enemy attacks very quickly, and you have to move very quickly yourself in order to defeat him. But anyway, we need to come here because we need the Covenant of Artorias, the ring that the Knight Artorias apparently used in order to traverse the Abyss. Now, when we actually go to Ulasil in the DLC, we don't have to have that ring on. So I don't know exactly why Artorias needed the ring to go to Ulasil unless he went to a different part, or he went to the part of where the Four Kings of New Londo are. I don't actually know if, you know, what the story is about that, if Artorias wore that ring to go to the New Londo ruins, or if he wore that to presumably go to Ulasil. Why don't we need the ring to go there? We don't need the ring to fight Manus, unlike with the Four Kings of New Londo. I'm just going to quit and reload here. So, not quite sure, and why it's been presumed that he gets that ring from either Frant or Cath, presumably Cath, in order to go and take on Manus, and it's part of some sort of big elaborate trick that Manus, or that the serpents are getting involved in order to kill Artorias or bring about dark or do something or other. But yeah, it's kind of confusing why exactly he needed that. There must be something there. I'm just going to go and unlock Dusk of Ulasil here, even though we don't really need her very much. I am going to use a little bit of magic later on in the series, which is why I've been upgrading my Pyromancy Flame. But I'm only going to use it to try to save Solaire, which I've heard, according to the wiki, you allegedly can do by spraying poison mist or toxic mist through the door without opening it to kill the enemies on the other side, which would be a really neat trick. I imagine that the designers probably knew you could do that, but who really knows? It's hard to say. Using this plus 14 weapon is going to make really any of the fights at this point in the game very, very easy. It's so lacking in challenge, it doesn't really matter. Although the Sif fight is not, I think, really meant to be done at this point. It's meant to be done later, so we're also going to be fighting the kitty cats up here. I'm just going to skip through all this dialogue here. It is a little bit tedious and sometimes easy to forget things when you exactly the order that you need to go through to get to the DLC. It'd be nicer if you can just jump there right away. But oh well, that really wouldn't be in the spirit of the Souls games if you could do that. I really love the look of this waterfall here. I also love that this area is dark, because of its proximity to the Abyss or to Manus or something like that. It seems really neat here. Dusk is a character that I do enjoy because of how prim and proper she is. But she really is just a damsel in distress and is a little bit boring because of that. She's just snatched away by Manus. It's also weird that she doesn't really remember what went on, with Manus. She was just so shocked or appalled at it that she just forgot about it. Doing this playthrough without a shield is really interesting because I just got finished playing Bloodborne for the first time. which I'm realizing I think she just stays there, even after you've summoned her. That's kind of weird. She doesn't disappear. But anyway, I just got finished playing Bloodborne, because I didn't have a PS4 for a long time, and that was an interesting experience, because doing a game completely without a shield is not something I'm totally unfamiliar with in these Souls games, but I think it did make the game a little bit harder than his Souls game, to put it mildly, especially because the enemies I found in Bloodborne to be a little bit too obnoxious with these flailing, wild, crazy attacks. I really want to talk about Dark Souls, though, and the enemies in this game, it's a much more slower, more slow kind of fight when you're doing things in this game. There has a slow, sort of methodical quality to it. It's really, really relaxing in most cases, because you can sort of develop a pattern about fighting, which is what makes the game easier. You can figure out exactly how the enemy fights, and then you can fight in exactly the right way. I guess you can say that about any video game, but it feels especially true about Dark Souls, because it has a more calm, slowed down pace with a lot of the attacks, and you don't have to respond with this kind of frenzy that I think you did have to respond in Bloodborne, with this extremely fast, ultra quick, you don't know when it's coming, flailing around with their arms fight. They even extended the flailing around attack, to the bosses of Bloodborne, which I thought was a little extreme. I mean, I love Bloodborne, don't get me wrong, but it's not quite as good as Dark Souls, of course. And I really didn't like that in Demon Souls, with this flailing arm attack that the Goblin guys in Valley of Defilement did, or the Soul-Starved Soldier guys did. It's just, it doesn't work as well as in this game, where mostly, especially a boss fight that's very hard, like Ornstein and Smo, it's got a really cool, fun pattern that you could find, whereas in that game they deliberately try to make it hard by removing that pattern, or making the pattern less obvious, I should say. So, I just love the combat in this game, because it's calming. I know that's strange to some people that are just starting out with Dark Souls, because I felt the same way. My first playthrough with this game, the first 20 hours or more of the game, I kind of felt more like it was a test of wills that I was trying to fight this game with. I wasn't even sure I enjoyed it. I just wanted to fight it in order to beat it because it had challenged me. But after that initial period, I realized how wonderful the game was, and how exciting and interesting and well-made the game is. I'm fighting these cat guys here that are sort of like cousins to Alvina, the head of the Forest Hunter Covenant, just because I don't believe I fought them in the original playthrough, and I very rarely fight these guys because they have this rolling attack that's really obnoxious and it's difficult to get around. I don't even know if you could block it with a shield. I'd have to come back here. I have a feeling that if you had a tower shield, there would be no problem, but if you had a medium shield, I don't know about that. And these guys permanently die, so there's just one of each of these guys. They are not undead. They are alive, just like Alvina was. They have just grown to enormous size because they are apparently immortal. I mean, if Alvina was around 1,000 years before at Ulasil, apparently these guys can't die, so I don't know exactly what's going on there. And this is just a fun little side entrance to this Sif boss room that you can get into if you don't feel like paying the 20,000 souls to get the Crest of Artorias. But really, that's not all that difficult, though, to pay that. This fight is a little bit challenging with a big heavy weapon, although typically you're going to be able to do it, I think. Even if you have a very big, heavy, slow weapon, Sif is actually pretty quick, and it's easier with a swifter weapon like a katana, but there you go. This fight is not one of the best in terms of actual gameplay, because it's actually fairly easy. It's not challenging at all, but it's one of the most important lore-related fights. In the last playthrough I did, I went through the trouble of defeating Manus first and then coming here and getting a different one. where Sif recognizes you, so it's a lot more emotionally powerful. And just this one where I don't know why Sif is blurry there. That's kind of weird. Or where exactly Sif was. I mean, I guess he was behind the grave, or was he somewhere else and jumped onto the grave? I don't think I've ever actually thought of that before. But anyway, we're going to defeat him in order to get the Covenant of Artorias. I don't know how Sif ended up with the Covenant of Artorias, or what he's been doing since Artorias died. I guess he's just been hanging around at this grave the entire time. I don't know why he felt it really was necessary to defend Artorias' grave out of all this honor and loyalty, because really, in a way, he's harming Artorias by doing that, because Artorias, theoretically, before he was corrupted, wanted the Abyss to be defeated. So it seems like a bad idea for him to be guarding this, because he should be trying to help someone get Artorias' stuff so we can defeat the thing that corrupted and destroyed him. But whatever. I mean, it's still a fun fight. I'm just nitpicking there, really. And this is another fight where the closer you are to danger, the farther you are from harm. I noticed in Bloodborne that they went out of their way to make it more difficult for you to hang around sort of in the middle of the legs of your enemy. You know, it's a lot easy. The bosses have a lot more. Oh, it's so sad. Look at them fall over. But it's a lot. The bosses have a lot more going for them in that fight, for being able to defend themselves if you try to hang around in the middle of everything. But anyway, I'm going to be cutting away just a second and heading and cutting back to Firelink Shrine, where we can begin the next section after I grab the Hornet Ring over here that Kieran had. There's also a sword I want to point out here on the edge here that looks like Lord Gwyn's sword that some people have theorized about, but it seems almost certainly just to be pointless. You know, there's no reason there. You know, a way they could have made that fight harder, now that I think about it, is if they made the swords damage you when you walk near them. That might be an interesting way to damage them. Just going to take a look at this ring here first. This ring symbolizes Knight Artorias' covenant with the beasts of the Abyss. But, what covenant exactly was that? I don't quite understand what the covenant was. You know, did he surrender his honor or something? What was the covenant to walk within the Abyss? And why we don't join a covenant when we put it on? Did he become a Dark Wraith, perhaps? I mean, that's the only covenant related to the Abyss. So, anyway, we're going to be fighting the 4 Kings of New Londo. This boss fight is one of the toughest in the game, and a bunch of boss fights in this game I thought were outrageously difficult the first few playthroughs, but now they're child's play, and they're very easy for me. But this one, along with a couple of others, including Manus, is one that still bothers me every time I play it, because it is very tough. The boss fight the boss room we face him in is a giant, black, empty chamber, and it's very easy to get disoriented with it. It looks sort of endless just by its huge, empty blackness, but it's pretty easy, at least for me, to get disoriented while fighting him and not really know exactly where I need to be, especially because you need to get there very, very quickly. It's also quite a run down to him. You need to spend quite a bit of time trying to race down to get to this boss room. So that is not super fun. I don't really like that. I mean, there's no practical way to put a bonfire down here, I think, but it still takes quite a bit of effort to get down here. I don't know why I can't riposte these guys when I parry them with my left hand. It just doesn't seem to work quite right. But this fight can cause you a lot of trouble, and it's much more difficult the way I'm doing it now. I do like how they added something in this game that's different from Dark Souls 2. In Dark Souls 2, they deliberately made certain things that you couldn't do until the second playthrough, until New Game Plus. So that's an interesting way to make you want to play New Game Plus, but Dark Souls really overstepped all of that by deciding that, okay, we're going to put things in the game that you're just not going to be able to do during your first playthrough of the game without learning how to play the game. And it's going to be more challenging if you try to do it that way. So you can play the game in different ways and do different things, and there are little choke points where you can't go beyond a certain event without, you know, like if you get framped, you can't go back and get Cath. But I have my Covenant of Artorias on. But I think it was handled better in Dark Souls 1, because I really am not fond of New Game Plus, really, in the long run. I just don't care for it. I prefer to start the game completely fresh, completely weak. I suppose you could do that where you start off, you don't level up at all, and then get to New Game Plus, and then start leveling up, but that really seems kind of pointless. Now, what happened right here, I tried to heal, but I realized I hadn't moved away from the gold pine resin on my sword and back to my Estus, and I died. Very, very embarrassing. Fortunately, though, the second time around, I managed to take him out. This fight can be very challenging, as I mentioned, for a number of reasons, one of which is that you have to figure out exactly where to stand when you're doing damage to him, because for some weird reason, his sword does more damage to you the farther you are away. I would have assumed it was the opposite, where you can, he'll do more damage the closer you are. There's really no way. I hate grab attacks in any game, and those were back with a vengeance in Bloodborne. I hate this. I hate grab attacks. You'll notice my humanity was actually siphoned away there, and because this happens a couple of times, I get that humanity ripped away from me quite a bit. A way to make this fight easier is to wear the Sentinel armor from the Forest Hunters, that's near the Forest Hunter Covenant. I got very lucky there because I barely even saw this guy, but I just kind of figured, this guy's right next to me, isn't he? It's very hard to avoid that blast, by the way. That's really difficult because, you have to get pretty darn far away from it. And that attack that he just sent out with me, you can block that with a shield, I believe, especially with a high magic resist shield, but it sort of wanders around in a weird pattern, and I just tend to ignore it and try to work on killing this guy, which I luckily did right before he blasted me, where I would have been almost dead. And that purple thing seemed to have dissipated without actually hitting me, so I guess you can just sort of wander around until it fades before it hits you. You see, that attack, that thrust, did a hell of a lot of damage. And I have 20 Estus flasks, and I needed every one of those, because this is just such a difficult fight. Especially at this point where I believe I'm oh no, that was the explosion again. That explosion is so hard to avoid, and getting grabbed like this, and he actually, if you notice there, he actually moves towards you. So it's not like you just have to not be standing next to him. You need to move pretty far away from him for him to not be able to grab you. You just need to flail around, really, and get as much damage possible as you can on this boss. And I just got, again, very lucky there that I managed to get that Estus healed off. I only have a flask plus 2. But anyway, this whole area is a great moment where they show how humans used, they tried to use the art of life drain that was given to them by the serpents, and this brings the question, why? What exactly is the point of these serpents giving humans this art of life drain? What are these serpents exactly? Are they weird descendants or perhaps ancestors of the ancient dragons? I would imagine descendants that are sort of related to them, that despise humans and gods alike and sort of want to destroy everything about them. And for some reason they've given them this weird ability that they know will destroy them, sort of like how Morgoth gives all sorts of promises to the elves to try to destroy them, or Sauron gives the ring to humans to destroy them. It's a very sneaky way to bring about their demise through their own hubris.
Greetings, undead warrior. I am the primordial serpent, Darkstalker Calf. I can guide thee and illuminate the truth. Undead warrior, conqueror of the four kings, is this not your wish? To know the truth of men and the undead? A wise choice, undead warrior. Prove you must that the truth becomes you. Seek Anor Londo and claim Gwyn's heirloom, the Lord Vessel. Now, go, undead warrior. Show the world that the truth becomes you. Ah, if you wish, I shall grant the art of life drain, the legendary power of the Dark Lord. It can preserve your humanity while undead, and cast off the shackles placed upon your brethren. Undead warrior, to speak now is premature. It begins with your retrieval of the Lord Vessel. Undead warrior.
Okay, guys, there was a huge lore dump there. We learned a ton of things from Kath that we did not learn from Frant. So I'm going to talk about that a lot in the next episode. I also wanted to show that there's really nothing more of this guy, is there? It just sort of boils away into darkness on the other edge of him. I mean, where exactly is he? What are we standing on? Who the heck knows?